On a clear breezy night, a team of 4 heroes was facing an S-class monster known as Fenrir. This wolf is powerful enough to destroy an entire city. The villagers affected by the threat tried to pool all the money they had to hire the fire dragon Fang to eliminate it. Although our main character is also part of this team, he is actually the most useless one. All the fighting is done by the other 3 members. Fenrir, tightly bound, immediately used its extraordinary strength to break free. Fortunately, the team had a skilled healer, so the other girl's wounds were healed in an instant. She continued to restrain the enemy, allowing the swordsman to deliver the finishing blow. The team leader charged in and unleashed a powerful slash, successfully defeating the enemy. At the same time, Kurt, who had been acting as bait, only just regained consciousness, but by then everything had already been resolved. Seeing this, the villagers were overjoyed because now they could live in peace. The next morning, the hero party was invited to stay for a meal. However, since all the dishes were ordinary fare, the team leader was not satisfied. He asked Kurt to do something, like always. Besides, today was also the last day they would get to enjoy a meal cooked by him. Not understanding anything, he asked again, realized he was too useless, so he had been kicked out. The team leader saw that this guy couldn't even kill a single slime, so what could he possibly accomplish? To become stronger, they needed a high-level mage, and since a team must have at least 4 members, the main character had to be the one to leave. There was no other choice. Up until now he had only done odd jobs like cooking and laundry, and when he desperately begged to stay, the team leader just kicked him away. As a result, he had to leave in sadness, knowing that from now on he would have to adventure alone. A few days later, after returning to the city, the main character also tried to find a job to earn some money. He walked into the guild and was warmly greeted by the receptionist there. After learning that he was looking for a job, she also requested an interview to assess his abilities. The main character introduced himself as Kurt, 15 years old this year. He was born in Heart Village, located in the Sin Mountains, which is a place very few people visit. After learning that he had previously worked for the little fire dragon Fang, the receptionist was quite shocked because this hero party is very famous and was recently promoted to SS rank. Unfortunately, he was too useless, so he ended up being fired. Still, the receptionist considered this a big plus in helping him find a suitable job. Hearing this, Kurt was overjoyed. He never expected that doing odd jobs would be so highly valued. Next came the ability assessment, where each person would receive a blessing from the gods. The association is a place that discovers the hidden talents of adventurers. The young man looked excited. Who knows, maybe he would discover his own strengths. The association will assign rankings from G up to SSS. A person ranked D wouldn't even be able to cut steel, but if they're ranked A, they could. And after the assessment, the results showed that all of the main characters' stats were at the lowest rank. That's seriously unbelievable. So the receptionist regretfully informed him that he had absolutely no talent at all. With 0 combat skills, the kinds of jobs he could do in this day and age were extremely limited. Even so, there were still some manual labor jobs available. Since Kurt had run out of money, he also asked for help. After that, the receptionist asked him to try lifting a sandbag, and he did, as she said. For some reason, even though he tried his best, he could only hold it up for a short while. To make matters worse, the sandbag even absorbed his mana. Truly bizarre. Seeing that he had at least some strength, the girl sent him off to do construction work in a border town that was hiring people to repair the city walls. Hearing that, Kurt immediately agreed, since he had no better options left. After bringing the letter of introduction from the guild to the manager, the man saw the main character was just there as a temp laborer. He didn't want to hire him, but since they needed workers, he agreed, even though the guy didn't look muscular. He showed the young man how to mix cement, and then how to plaster it onto the wall. Main wondered whether he should infuse magic power into the cement, since that's how things were done where he came from. Every 3 hours someone would come to check on the work progress, so laziness was not allowed. At the very least you had to finish half a bucket. That was the rule. Before he could ask whether he needed to infuse magic power or not, the person had already left. Kurt thought this was something obviously necessary, so he didn't mention it. Thinking that the manager probably saw him as useless, he tried his best. About 3 hours later, the guy came back and was completely shocked. Somehow, in a miraculous way, Kurt had managed to repair the entire assigned area. He could have done even more, but he ran out of cement, so this was all he could manage. The important thing is, the main character had no idea he was working at the pace of 10 people combined over the course of a month. When asked how he managed to plaster the high sections, it turned out he just used a stick to roll and spread the cement he threw up there. No one would ever do it that way, but he managed to pull it off, so his older brother was left speechless. When asked how long Kurt planned to work here, he said about a week, but he was fired right after that, because if he worked that fast, how could they afford to pay him? The current manager even gave Main all the money he had on hand in advance and said the rest would be settled with the union later. Because Kurt was taking away everyone else's jobs, they couldn't keep him on. It was explained that repairing the walls was actually meant to create jobs for the poor, but now that there's no more work left, those people will starve. They blamed him for working too fast, but from Main's perspective, it didn't seem fast at all. The man even said that Main was no different from an SSS rank, so he advised him to leave this place and go work in the capital where it would be more suitable. Later, he went back to the guild and told them that he was so useless he got fired. He thought people were just trying to encourage him by giving compliments, but in reality he was just too incompetent. Right at that moment a girl came over looking for someone to help her. However, she didn't have much money, so it was a bit difficult. Kurt thought this girl was really beautiful. The receptionist also came over to ask and found out that this young lady was looking for miners but wanted to pay them based on the results after the work was done. This condition was too unreasonable, so no one dared to take the risk and agree, because if they couldn't mine anything, they'd end up starving. The girl was worried that in a week the mine she had discovered would be confiscated, so she urgently needed someone right now. Hearing this, Kurt stepped forward and asked to try out for the job since he had some experience. He had previously mined together with the villagers in his hometown, so he more or less knew how to do the job. The receptionist was a bit worried because if it didn't work out, they wouldn't get paid at all. At first the girl refused because she thought this kid looked too weak. The receptionist said hiring a dwarf would require at least 10 silver coins. With no other choice, Ulysses agreed to let the main character try. The young man happily followed, not forgetting to thank the receptionist. Kurtzrayo thought he was truly kind and also handsome, perfect for working at a brothel where the ladies could care for him. She even imagined that cheerful scene in her head. A colleague then handed over the payment invoice that Kurt received from his construction job. He was shocked when he saw it because they paid the main character 200 gold coins. Kurtzrayo couldn't believe that Kurt could earn so much money in such a short time. She tripped over some sandbags and upon asking found out that these weren't the usual kind. They are used to measure magical power. The more magic you have, the heavier they feel when you lift them. But if you're just an ordinary person, there won't be any reaction. At this point, Kurt Xiao finally realized Kurt wasn't ordinary, because to Mainz the sandbags felt extremely heavy, which means he possesses an incredible amount of magical power. Even he himself didn't know he was special. And so, the young man was taken up the mountain to spend the night. Work would begin the next day. The important thing is, there was only one hut here, which made men a bit embarrassed because he had to sleep with a girl. But the girl didn't care about that at all. Kurt thought he couldn't possibly share a hut with someone as cute as Ulysses. When the girl heard that, she immediately protested, thinking he was joking. Kurt said that he had traveled all over the world and had never met anyone as beautiful as her. Hearing that, the girl lost her composure and demanded that he stop talking. Later, when Mainz was invited to eat, he looked delighted because it had been a long time since anyone had done that for him. He was always the one cooking for others. As night fell, Kurt woke up after dozing off for a bit. He turned and saw Ulysses in her underwear flaunting her body and making the young man embarrassed. He thought she was too careless. If it was someone else, she'd probably be taken advantage of. Kurt went outside to sleep, not realizing he was being tested. Ulysses wanted to know what kind of person he was, since they would be traveling together for a week. She had to admit that Mainz was a good guy and especially, very cute. The next morning, she was quite surprised to see that Mainz could do just about anything. Since he had so much free time, he even fixed her shirt for her. Their goal was to earn 10 gold coins within a week. When he asked if she had decided where to dig, he found out she was just going to dig randomly. Hearing that, he was at a loss. How could they possibly find any ore that way? Before starting, he wanted to take a walk around to scout the area first. After a while, Mainz managed to find a suitable spot for mining. He simply used a hammer to break off the outer layer of rock and immediately obtained a large crystal, which could be sold for 3 gold coins. Just like that, after a few hours, Kurt managed to collect a whole bunch. The girl asked if she could sell hers, but Mainz refused. Ulysses misunderstood, thinking that since he found it, he would take everything for himself. But that wasn't the case, because Mainz wanted to increase their value first by turning them into magic crystals. However, as the girl knew, there weren't even 10 mages in the entire kingdom who could do that. No sooner had she finished speaking than Kurt had already completed one, leaving her utterly shocked. He made it look incredibly easy, barely exerting any effort, while it usually took others at least an hour to finish, yet he only needed a few seconds. But she misunderstood again, thinking mages could actually maintain their magic for an hour, which was amusing. Ulysses realized they weren't on the same wavelength, so she didn't know what else to say. Since they had gathered enough that afternoon, the girl wanted to go sell them right away. Kurt, however, suggested staying here because he wanted to do a few things. The woman said she would come back the next morning after selling the magic crystals. When she brought them to the place to sell, they asked to see a permit. She replied that this place had just been created, so how could she possibly have one? When questioned about the source, she knew she couldn't reveal Mainz's identity. She refused the transaction and then took out her royal-affiliated adventurer badge to avoid further trouble. Since she couldn't sell them here, she teleported to a place where she knew someone. At first they thought it was something worthless, but after checking, they realized that each stone was worth 10 gold coins because it contained 10 times the usual amount of magic power. Moreover, it was processed with exceptional precision to prevent any energy loss. As a result, Ulysses was paid 500 gold coins for selling 50 similar stones. The girl demanded to know the identity of the creator and insisted that these stones could only be sold at this shop since her superiors would not want such items to flood the market. Ulysses refused to reveal the maker, even when threatened, saying that she no longer served the royal family and therefore had no reason to follow their orders. With no other options, the girl resorted to advising as a friend, urging her not to let the creator leave the country. She said she was willing to grant Mainz a royal title if the king valued him, he might even become a count. The next day when she returned, she saw the young man had already built an entire house. Unbelievable. When she asked how he finished it in one night, Kurt said people from his hometown always do things that way. The woman thought everyone from his hometown must be monsters, not normal people. The scene shifts to the Fire Dragon Fang party, now facing many difficulties since they drove Kurt away. Their strength has decreased, they can't produce fire, and they can't recover either. They kept arguing like that, making the remaining girl realize that this team was about to fall apart. Back at the small house where Mainz was staying, after hearing Ulysses talk about being invited and treated like a noble, he also asked her the reason why. She explained that the person who appraised the magic crystal he created was a mage from the royal palace. Because he was interested in Mainz, he extended the invitation. Kurt thought for a moment and then politely declined, as he couldn't imagine himself, given his family background, doing a job of higher rank than others. Moreover, this young man actually wanted to return to the Fire Dragon's lair, so for now he'll keep working at this mine until he gets kicked out. Hearing that, Ulysses suddenly felt very happy. When asked about whether the magic crystals sold could cover the taxes, she didn't dare to say the truth. Instead, she just claimed that Kurt handled everything, so she had already transferred the money into Mainz's account. He still hasn't realized his own worth. I wonder why Ulysses had to go that far. Although that girl really is short on money, she still doesn't dare to accept such a large sum. In short, she still hopes that the young man will continue working here for a while longer. Hearing that, he happily reported that today he had already found a spot with a very good ore vein. When asked about eating, sleeping and resting, the young man said he was fine. He had already slept 6 hours last night. In fact, back when he was still working with the Fire Dragon team, he only got 4 hours of rest a day because he thought that as the one in charge of odd jobs, he had to get up early. He thought Ulysses was disappointed in him, so he promised to make up for the rest time by working even more. This rather serious misunderstanding left Ulysses at a loss, but in the end, she just let it go. After arriving at a good spot, Mainz instructed his friend to dig down below, and even carefully warned her not to dig deeper than 50 meters, as if anyone could actually dig that deep in a single day. As for him, he would head to another location with more crystals. They kept working like that until late afternoon, when Ulysses finally managed to find a rather large piece of material. According to her calculations, it would sell for more than 3 gold coins, so she was very happy. If Mainz converted it into magic crystals, she might even earn more. After that, she went to the spot where Kurt was mining. Just as expected, that crazy guy had managed to dig out an entire tunnel. Seriously, that's unbelievable. The further she went inside, the more spacious it became. She couldn't understand how Mainz managed to finish it in just one day. Just then, the guy came over saying he was looking for her, holding a pile of ore in his hands but claimed it was just junk. Ulysses looked at it and wondered why it sparkled like that. The guy thought these kinds of things weren't worth anything, so he just threw them away. After asking, she found out that this was mithril, which is even more valuable than gold or platinum. In his village this stuff is everywhere, so they often just throw it away. After hearing that, Ulysses' face ended up like this. She just couldn't figure out what kind of person he was. This is an extremely rare ore throughout the entire world. When asked what Mainz was looking for, it turned out to be orichalcum. She thought this was a legendary ore, because people often call it the metal of the gods, but for Mainz, he just says you'll find it if you keep digging. Usually, you'll come across it after digging about 7 kilometers, just like he did. Suddenly, at this moment, Ulysses realized something was off. This guy not only dug a tunnel over 7 kilometers long in 8 hours, but he also dug straight through someone else's mountain. Now that's something. At this point, her friend thought that nothing could surprise her anymore. Kurt, seeing that digging through the mountain made travel easier, asked if they needed to fill it back in like before, but the girl said just leaving it like this was fine. After finishing the mining work, Mainz had to return to the city for a week to find something else to do. Thanks to Mainz's unbelievable tunnel, traveling between the cities was now incredibly simple. At this point, Kurt ran into Bandana again at Fire Dragon Fang. When he asked why she was there, she said she was no longer a member of that group. A lot has happened since he passed away. The captain kept smashing things up because the food was terrible, and on top of that, he refused to pay the restaurant. The result was that he became wanted everywhere, but he still acted all high and mighty. On top of that, he even forced Bandana to go look for mines. He had no idea that she was actually extremely clever. She temporarily agreed, and while she was at it, took the teleportation stone, saying it would help her find him faster. Right after that, the soldiers stormed in and arrested him. This girl thought Maclefish was really lucky to have been summoned by the church. Otherwise, she would have been caught along with that foolish captain. From this point on, Fire Dragon Fang was considered disbanded. This is the reason she was there, because she actually didn't want the person she was watching over to get involved in that mess. Mines was clearly saddened to see that she was also being expelled. This naive guy said he wanted to return to Fire Dragon Fang, but now it seemed impossible. When the woman asked why, he said he really admired Volnova and still owed him a few things. Bandana saw that name as a perfect cover to hide his identity. Knowing that he was currently unemployed, she agreed to recommend him for a job. She said that one of her acquaintances was seriously short-staffed, so she sent Kurt there to work and earn some money. It was one of the 15 licensed crafting workshops, so working there would be considered a great contribution to society. This is a place that specializes in producing and trading pharmaceuticals as well as magical equipment. The person in charge, who holds a license, is called a master craftsman. They have authority to distribute and develop products. Kurt thought that working here was amazing. But when he arrived, it wasn't quite like what he had imagined. When he knocked on the door, a girl came out to greet him, which took him quite by surprise. Being stared at, she thought that Mines had never seen an elf like her before. He had to apologize and then introduced himself as Kurt. When he asked if she was the master craftsman, he learned that person had already gone out. Michelle is the assistant, and after finding out that the young man had come to help out, she was also glad. Just like that, she pulled the young man inside to take a look. Kurt couldn't understand how this house could be so dirty, and his job today was to clean up this mess. He thought he would be working in the workshop, but who would have guessed he'd end up doing house chores instead? Mines agreed cheerfully, since he was already used to this. Very quickly, everything was spotless and like new in just 30 minutes. After that, the young man went to find Michelle to ask about the next task. Somehow, he ended up stumbling right into the scene of a girl changing her clothes. The girl also asked who he was, so he shyly introduced himself and said he would be working here today. Looking at the mark on her stomach, Kurt realized it was a curse. This young man had always been kind-hearted, so he wanted to help somehow. After briefly examining the curse, he guessed that she had suffered so much that she no longer even felt pain. The lucky thing was that the little one was still able to eat, so Kurt decided to cook porridge. The scene shifts to Eulizia and Mimiko. After presenting the super rare mineral mine that Mines had discovered, her friend estimated that it had to be worth at least 50,000 gold. This was truly insane because Kurt considered mithril to be a worthless metal. Mimiko couldn't even believe that orichalcum actually existed in the world. If rumors about him spread, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. At best, Mines would be kidnapped to work, and at worst he could be assassinated because it was just too dangerous. This girl admitted that he was a monster boy. She wondered how someone like that could have managed to stay hidden and live in obscurity all this time. According to Eulizia, it was because Mines did odd jobs for the Fire Dragon Fang. Mimiko said that the captain is currently wanted everywhere. When asked what she planned to do with Mines, Eulizia thought she would help him become a master craftsman to avoid drawing attention. The problem is, how can he possibly accept this? Because Kurt is the type of person who has no idea just how outstanding his abilities really are. He always underestimates himself. Back to the young man, he had just finished making the pot of porridge. The owner of the place was also present. Seeing everything so clean, she was extremely surprised. Her name was Ophelia, and after learning that Mines had met the girl afflicted by the curse, she also tried to drive him away, even warning him not to tell anyone else about that girl. After getting paid, Mines thought that this was a bit too much since he had worked for less than an hour. Ophelia blamed herself for letting an outsider come into contact with the girl again. At the moment, she was busy trying to slow down the corrosive effects of the curse. After bringing the porridge to the girl, his stomach kept growling non-stop. The blonde girl explained that the aroma of the porridge made her even hungrier. She was about to test if it was poisoned, but then refused because she trusted that young man. Even though they had only met once, he gave people an incredible sense of reassurance. Moreover, this body is already on the verge of death because of the curse, so being poisoned now wouldn't make much difference. At least this time, she wants to trust someone completely. Hearing that, Ophelia agreed to let her student enjoy the porridge made by Kurt. After taking one spoonful, the blonde girl praised how wonderful it was, but immediately after, she felt pain and collapsed. Ophelia realized she had made a mistake by once again giving in to Liz's wishes, thinking that the food really was poisoned and thus felt bitter. However, after a moment, the girl unexpectedly recovered and said that the curse had disappeared. This left the teacher in disbelief because the recovery process was unbelievably fast. The scene shifts to those behind the curse. After learning that the other side had managed to break it, the mastermind ordered Princess Liz to be killed immediately. That evening the pair arrived at Mimiko's shop to talk. Upon seeing the princess there, the two immediately knelt down to pay their respects. They thought Liz was gravely ill and couldn't understand why she would come in person. Ophelia explained in detail about the incident where Liz was struck by an extremely powerful curse. Someone is trying to assassinate her because she is the only daughter of King Princess Francois. It's not wrong to say that Liz can be considered a symbol of peace between the two countries. In other words, someone is trying to break this relationship by carrying out an assassination. Mimiko was overjoyed that her friend had recovered. And the reason they came here was to find a young man named Kurt because he was the one who lifted the curse. After hearing that, the other two were stunned. Everyone sat down to talk, and when Ulysses heard about the princess eating porridge cooked by Kurt to break the curse, she held her head in disbelief. It had only been half a day since they last saw each other, yet he was already in trouble. There was just no dealing with him. As for the culprit behind the princess's assassination attempt, there was definitely a connection to the martial arts master, who also had the ability to interfere in palace affairs. According to the list, Mimiko gave 3 results. The first was General Sanova, the top-ranking general. Next was the third princess consort Elsadora, and finally the bishop of the church named Tristan. He could use his followers to sabotage the protective charms in Liz's room. The girl's stepmother also had the freedom to move about the palace while the general had connections to a thieves' guild specializing in gathering information. Ophelia realized that it was currently very difficult to identify the true enemy, so she had to set a trap to uncover those behind the scenes. At present the princess had turned 15, and according to tradition, she would train outside for a year before returning to the palace. Ophelia wanted to set up a workshop as a front, managed by a master craftsman, while secretly allowing the princess to train there. Surely, those behind the scenes would try to investigate this so-called master craftsman, and they would end up creating a fictional character. That way, they would never be able to find out who actually made the screen, and in the end, they would uncover the true identities of those who wanted to assassinate Liz. The important thing now is to find someone who can be recognized as the master craftsman. Hearing this, Ulysses thought it was perfect timing. She handed Ophelia a high-grade magic crystal, which astonished her. The pair explained that this item was actually made by Kurt. Hearing this, Liz was very happy because it proved that he truly wasn't an ordinary person. The next morning, when he went to work, he found the place closed. Michelle then came over and told him that the master had gone out, so he didn't need to do any cleaning today. Hearing that, Kurt became quite upset because it had taken him so long to find a job. He thought he must have done something wrong, which was why they didn't want to hire him anymore. His stomach was growling, so he went off to fill it. Coincidentally, at the eatery, there was an adventurer party looking for a porter. Since the quest had to be completed today, it was likely they would have to turn it down. Hearing this, I immediately went over and expressed my interest in joining. Although he's terrible at fighting, he can definitely handle heavy labor. The girl in the group looked down on him when she heard this, calling Kurt a child. She ended up getting smacked on the head by her older brother, since she was about the same age as him anyway. The older brother was quite gentle. He apologized for his sister's rudeness but advised us not to go as this job was anything but simple. Especially this time, they were going to hunt a golem weighing 200 kilograms. Only someone with expertise could transport something like that. Hearing this, Kurt just smiled and said that if it was only 200 kilos, it wouldn't be a problem. He even suggested that if he could lift both of them up, they should let him join. They still didn't believe it was real until he easily lifted the other guy up. Then it was the blonde one's turn, who weighed 150 kilograms, and he was picked up like a baby. Seeing this, everyone applauded and praised him. As a result, Kurt succeeded and was allowed to join the temporary team. The guy in armor introduced himself as Hans, a danjo fighter, which means samurai, and the captain of the team. Sheena is the archer, and she was also pleased to meet Kurt. He was very happy because these people seemed very kind. More importantly, he had now found a job to earn money. Their team actually has a porter, but he is sick and hopes I will take care of him during this time. Just like that, everyone headed into the dungeon, but as soon as they reached the entrance, Kurt started yelling loudly because he stepped on a slime. Sheena, speechless, also came over to give him a hand. He couldn't even defeat the weakest creature by himself and managed to stab himself in the foot. They also realized he was really terrible at fighting. Fortunately, the two older guys were easygoing, saying that for fighting, just leave it to them. He only needed to carry things, because if he got into danger, even if he beat a monster, he couldn't bring anything back. Kurt was surprised that these people didn't show any signs of anger, even though he was so useless. Back at Fire Dragon Fang, he was treated terribly. At the slightest mistake, the captain would hit him. Suddenly I was so moved that I cried. After going inside, they used a type of powder to light up the dungeon. Thanks to that, Kurt was able to spot the goblins' droppings. Sheena looked at the very fresh dung and guessed that they might still be around. Hans reassured his younger brother, saying that if there were only one or two, it wouldn't be a problem, but if they happened to run into an entire pack, they would have to run away before it turned into a fight. Just like that, they entered the ruins and the main character continued to discover a secret door. Up ahead, there were also goblins lying in ambush, making the situation worse. Danjo and Sheena immediately took them down. However, its cry had already alerted the whole pack. Based on the sounds they heard, they realized there were too many, so they had to retreat. Both ends seemed blocked, and they had to prepare for a desperate fight. Seeing this, Kurt announced there was a secret passage here, so he was asked to find a way out. After they ran inside, the girl suddenly closed the door, leaving me confused. When asked why she didn't let the two guys in, Sheena started to cry. Hans, who was outside, also called in, saying that he knew they wouldn't be able to escape while being chased by the goblins. Therefore, they would stay behind to hold off the enemy so the others could escape, which meant both of them were ready to sacrifice themselves, and Sheena had already been told about this beforehand, which was why she closed the door, even though she herself didn't want to lose her brother at all. When Maine asked to stay, he was scolded for being someone who couldn't even beat a slime, so what good would he be in a fight? Staying here would only get in the way of the two of them. Seeing them argue, the others urged them to run and not worry about anything else. Danjo had no objections, since this job required mental preparation from the start. Hans said protecting his little sister until death was the greatest honor. Sheena was very sad, but still tried to reassure herself that her two brothers would be fine. After lighting up the room, she was shocked to death to find an iron dragon golem standing right in front of her. At the same time, Ulysses brought Liz to the inn where Maine was staying to look for him, and she asked the princess to remember to keep her true identity a secret. The younger girl agreed, saying she also wanted Kurt to see her as an ordinary person. After going inside, they couldn't find him anywhere. The guy with the bandana outside said that if they were looking for Maine, he was currently heading to the dungeon in the northeast. Hearing that, Ulysses ran out to check but didn't see anyone. She thought it might be a trap but still had to go and check it out. Knowing it could be dangerous, Liz was supposed to stay here and wait. However, the princess still wanted to go along because she was no longer weakened by the curse. She also scolded Ulysses, saying a bodyguard shouldn't leave her master. Moreover, Liz had magic to protect herself, so she insisted she wouldn't be a burden. Hearing that, the other girl finally agreed and they set off together to look for the person. Entering the cave, they saw many footprints, so they were sure Kurt was here and tried to confirm it. Liz used magic to enhance her senses and Ulysses wondered what kind of sound she would hear. The princess then enhanced her sense of smell to pick up scents. Honestly, that's pretty wild. Ulysses thought about how the two of them had hugged before, so she remembered the scent and pondered as they went deeper inside. Liz said that someone was fighting nearby. To be safe, she enhanced her companion as well and they rushed in. At that moment, Hans and Danjo were on the brink of death. Fortunately, Ulysses' combat abilities were quite high, and she easily cut through the formation of the goblin horde. Meanwhile, the pair inside were still frozen in place before the terrifying monster. Sheena blamed herself, thinking she should have given up on this mission from the start. That way, at least everyone would still be alive. On top of that, she had dragged Maine into this mess as well, so she apologized. The Iron Dragon Golem is the type that attacks intruders. If you try to pass, you're sure to die. While the two of them had risked their lives to buy time for the others, it seemed they would have to stop here. Kurt put on a calm front, saying it would be fine, and suggested they escape together. But first, they had to deal with this troublesome golem. Just like that, the young man walked in and dodged the attacks with ease. It seemed Maine was already too familiar with this. Every stab he made hit hard. The dragon, writhing in pain, tried to fight back but quickly lost several of its heads. Sheena was so shocked by the scene that she couldn't say a word. In the blink of an eye, the giant creature was reduced to a pile of rubble. Even Slim couldn't defeat that thing, so it turns out he's absurdly strong. But in reality, for Kurt, this was just another mining job. He smiled and said he's been used to this since he was a kid. Just then, Ulysses rushed over and Sheena told her how Maine had used a short sword to completely destroy the dragon. After seeing his older sister, he waved to greet her as well. He was completely unharmed and also asked Ulysses to go save the other two who were in danger. Actually, she only came in here after finishing off the group of goblins. Although the other two were injured, their lives were not in danger. She recalled the legend about a boy with G-rank combat abilities but an S-rank mining skill who was able to slay a bringer dragon with just a sickle. So it turns out that Maine is living proof that the legend is real. Liz was thrilled to see how cool Kurt looked. Outside, Khan explained that he had never heard of goblins fleeing into this place before, which was why he took on this job. Danzo also expressed his gratitude to Ulysses for saving them. She also wanted to discuss the upcoming establishment of a new workshop. She wanted to invite Maine to join. but since he was currently with those other people, he was a bit hesitant. Khan thought this was a great opportunity, so he told him not to worry about them. Regarding that, Ulysses said she also needed adventurers, so she wanted to hire all of them as well. Hearing that, everyone was very happy. Only Sheena was still concerned about Main's overwhelming power. Ulysses reminded her younger brother to go get his aptitude checked after returning because knowing his true abilities would make it easier to work at the workshop. Later, when they arrived at the guild, Mimi was already there and introduced herself as a royal mage who would help assess Main. She also mentioned that she had heard a lot of praise about him from Ophelia. After finishing up, they let the group of adventurers go celebrate surviving their ordeal. Meanwhile, Ulysses stayed behind to ask her friend about Main's true abilities. She explained that this guild could only assess aptitude from rank G up to SS, meaning that anything SSS rank or higher couldn't be measured. And Kurt was exactly that kind of person. All of his stats and talents are SSS. The latent magical power in his body is many times greater than hers. Letting him become a master craftsman is absolutely the right decision. Mimi secretly thought to herself how lucky she was to be the one conducting the assessment, because if this got out, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. When the two friends returned, they saw the receptionist covering her ears. She must have overheard everything, so the couple teased her and let her join the group of people who knew about Main's abilities. After that, Kurt was taken back by carriage along with the group of adventurers. The place they were heading to wouldn't have any teleportation stones. It's also a bit remote, making it suitable for the princess to train. Because it's close to the demon territory, this area is extremely important. Hiring a group of adventurers to protect the newly built workshop would help avoid arousing suspicion from others. After assessing their abilities, Ulysses didn't see any problems. Sheena, on the other hand, was still preoccupied with Main's true identity, while the two men knew nothing and were simply following orders. When they asked what kind of person the master craftsman was, Ulysses had to lie. She couldn't possibly tell Kurt that he was actually the one. After approaching the city walls, Main recalled how he had been fired the last time, right after being hired to do repairs. He was still under the misunderstanding that he had been dismissed because he was too useless. Once they arrived, Ulysses introduced the place as their base. Looking around, there was absolutely nothing there yet. The other three were a bit worried, but were told that for now, they would stay at a nearby inn for a few days. After that, Main would be in charge of building the workshop himself, and this was agreed upon. He said that if it was made of wood, it could be finished in a day, but to make it spacious and clean would take much more time. The two men thought that building a workshop in a single day was truly impossible. Who would have thought that the young man only needed 3 days to create a workshop just as he wanted? Ulysses had already witnessed his unbelievable abilities, so she said even if it took more than 3 days, that would be fine. If you need any materials, just let me know. Hearing that, he wrote down the important things needed to get started right away. These included ruby, sapphire, and griffin feathers. Sheena didn't understand any of it, since those things had nothing to do with construction. The silver-haired girl knew the three siblings also had a lot of questions, so she took them elsewhere to talk, leaving Main to work. In addition, the princess reminded Kurt to remember to eat and get enough rest, saying there was no need to rush because there was still plenty of time. As for the adventurers, they were also invited down to have things explained to them. The younger sister spoke up, guessing that her friend probably wanted to tell the two brothers about Kurt's abilities. He single-handedly defeated the golem using only a short knife. And to make it even more unbelievable, he said he was already used to harvesting iron golems. Up until now, Sheena is still very scared, so she wants to know who he really is. Ulysses also introduced herself as a former adventurer who once served the royal family. And Liz is not just an ordinary noble. She took out a dagger engraved with the royal family crest, revealing that she is the third princess of this kingdom. However, she is currently hiding her identity, so there's no need for everyone to be overly respectful. As for Kurt, they actually don't have any information about him either. The only thing they can confirm is that Main doesn't have any combat skills, but all his other abilities are at SSS rank. This is a legendary level. People often doubted whether it actually existed or not. But after observing what Main has done, it turns out this is indeed true. Ulysses added that he is completely